There is a question every man our age asks himself at 2 in the morning, and never aloud. When it ends, who will be there? I know the answer. Not from guessing. I have been in the room more than a dozen times now. Friends, men from the coffee group, my own brother-in-law, my own wife. I sat in those chairs and watched who came and who did not. It is never who you expect. There are 4 people who show up, the same 4, room after room after room. And 3 of them are people you are either tending or neglecting this week, because that room gets built decades ago, out of ordinary Tuesdays that do not feel like they matter at all while you are leaving them. The 4th one is not a visitor at all. That is the one that changed how I live my ordinary days. If you are over 65, comment on the state you are watching from, tonight especially. It does me good to know you are out there. Here is the first one. The first chair is filled with whoever has a rhythm with you. Not the deepest bond. The steadiest one. My friend Chester, the bowling fellow, the one who kept score for years after his shoulder quit, had a younger brother named Wendell. And I want you to understand, those 2 were not close. Not in the way you are picturing. Different lives entirely. Chester stayed in town. Wendell went out to Arizona in his 30s. There was old friction between them too, something about their mother's house, and I never got the details because Chester never offered them. But they had a Sunday phone call. Every Sunday. 15 minutes, sometimes 10. Mostly about nothing at all, whether in 2 states, ball games, who from the old neighborhood had died that month. Chester used to grumble about it, honestly. He would say, "Well, I've got to call Wendell," the way a man talks about taking out the trash. 31 years on Sundays. When Chester went into the hospital that last time, Wendell was on a plane the next morning. He stayed 11 days. He was in that first chair, and nobody had to ask him, and nobody had to explain to him what was needed, because the man had been showing up every 7 days for 3 decades. The hospital was just a different room to show up in. Now let me give you the other half, because the other half is what hurts, and it is the half that teaches. I sat with another man. Good man, I will call him Ellis. Ellis had a best friend, a real one, 50 years deep. They had been through the service together, if you can believe it, and there was a stretch in the 60s where those 2 men saw each other every day. Real love there. The kind of friendship men our age does not make anymore. But that friend moved 4 hours away in the 80s. And what happened is what always happens. The calls got thinner. Christmas cards. A phone call twice a year, always warm, always ending with, "We ought to do this more often." 25 years of ought to. At the end, that friend came. One afternoon. And gentlemen, I watched him sit in that chair like a man in a stranger's house, not because he did not love Ellis, but because he genuinely did not know what to say to him anymore. He did not know about diabetes. Did not know Ellis had moved rooms. I did not know the names of the great-grandchildren. He left after 2 hours, and Ellis's daughter told me later she found him crying in the parking lot in his truck. 50 years of love, and he could not fill a chair for one afternoon. Meanwhile, Wendell, the brother Chester, grumbled about calling, stayed 11 days. That is when I understood something I had had backwards my whole life. At the end, love does not fill chairs. Habit fills chairs. A channel between 2 people gets cut by repetition, not by intensity, and once it is cut deep enough, a man can walk it in his sleep, at 80, in a hospital, in the worst week of his life. Ellis's friend had love. He just did not have the channel anymore, and you cannot dig one in an afternoon. So, here is the question I want you to sit with tonight, and notice it is not, who do you love most? That question fools men. Every man can answer that one instantly and feel fine about himself. The real question is, who do you talk to, at some rhythm, with no occasion attached? If you can name that person, good, protect that rhythm like it's medicine, because it is. And if you cannot name one, that is not a diagnosis, friend. That is an assignment. It is the easiest one on tonight's list, and it starts with picking a person and picking a day. But the second chair is the one man lose without ever knowing they are losing it. Most of you are losing it right now, and you are losing it out of pure politeness. The second chair belongs to whoever ends up inside the practical orbit of your daily life. I have come to call that one the caretaker. And here is the first surprise. It is very often not the child you would expect. Most often it is a daughter or a daughter-in-law, which is true. But I have seen it be the son everyone in the family calls the difficult one. I have seen it be a niece who lived 2 streets over. Once, and this one stayed with me, it was an ex-daughter-in-law, still coming around 15 years after a divorce nobody in that family had gotten over. What made them the caretaker was never affection. It was proximity, plus a long history of being let in. And that second part, being let in, is where men like us fail. Not from cruelty, from pride, and from a kind of politeness that curdles into isolation without anybody noticing. I watched this happen to a fellow I will call Ray. Proud man, capable his whole life, roofer, could do anything with his hands. And Ray spent his 70s refusing every single offer of help that came his way. His daughter would say, "Dad, let me drive you to the appointment," and Ray would say, "What for? I've been driving since I was 15. She would offer to sit with him and sort the insurance papers, and he would say, "I'm not senile yet." She offered to have somebody clean the gutters. "It's my house." Every one of those answers is a reasonable sentence, gentlemen. That is what makes this trap so quiet. Every single refusal, on its own, sounds like a capable man being capable. But stack them up. 20 years of, "I'm fine, I don't need you," is 20 years of teaching a person to stay outside. And that is exactly what she learned. She was a good daughter, she offered for years. Then somewhere around 12, she stopped offering, because a person can only be waved off so many times before they start believing they are not needed. At the end, Ray was genuinely bewildered that nobody was standing close. He said something to me in that room I have never forgotten. He said, "I don't understand it. I never asked them for a thing. I never asked them for anything." He said it was like defense. He did not hear that it was the confession. Now hear me clearly, because I am not telling you to become helpless. That is the opposite of everything I believe, and you know it if you have listened to me before. A man should keep his own decisions and his own gavel if his mind is sound. That is not what this is about. This is about small doors. Let somebody help you with something small this month. Let your daughter drive you to the appointment even though you could drive yourself, and let the conversation in the car be the actual point. Let your son-in-law manage the paperwork call while you sit right there. Let the neighbor's boy do the gutters and pay him, and tell him he did it right. You are not surrendering anything, friend. You are showing a person where the door is. Because on the last day, the people in that room will be the people who know the way in, and nobody learns the way in on the last day. They learn it over 20 years of small permissions. Now the third chair. And this one I have never once, not one time, heard a man predict correctly about his own life. The third chair belongs to someone from your last chapter. Not your longest one. The coffee group fellow. The neighbor. The church friend of 6 years. The man who drove you to appointments. Somebody whose entire relationship with you is measured in years, not decades, and who is nonetheless sitting right there, and very often staying the longest. When Earl passed, Earl Kowalski, whose estate sale I have told you about, there were 2 men in that room besides family. One was me, 41 years of friendship. The other was a neighbor named Douglas who had moved in 8 years earlier. 8 years, out of Earl's 81. And Douglas sat with him both nights. I went home to sleep, gentlemen. Douglas did not. Now, I have had a lot of quiet evenings to think about why the recent one shows up so reliably, And here is the best answer this old head can produce. Recent relationships are made from present tense material. They are not stored in memory, they are stored in this week's routine. Douglas did not have to travel back across 40 years to reach Earl. Douglas saw Earl on Tuesday. They had had a running argument about a fence line for 8 years and a standing habit of coffee on Saturday mornings. When Earl went into that hospital, Douglas did not have to reconstruct anything. He just kept doing what he had been doing, showing up in a different building. Whereas a friendship from 1975, however deep, must be excavated. And most men do not have the strength or the time to excavate anything in that final week. Which means something I want every man listening to hear plainly, because it contradicts what our whole generation believes. The friend you make at 72 is not a lesser friend than the one you made at 22. In terms of who is in that room, he may well be the greater one. I know what the objection is. I have made it myself. It's too late for me to make new friends. Everybody's got their people already. Let me tell you how that sentence looked from where I was sitting at 74, in the worst stretch of loneliness I have ever known, and let me tell you how it ended. A fellow named Stanley from my church came and stood on my porch. Barely knew him. His wife had put him up to it, going around collecting men for a Saturday coffee group at the diner. He stood there awkwardly as a teenager and said, "We're a bunch of old-timers. Nothing fancy. You don't even have to talk." I almost said no. I want you to hear that clearly. I almost said a no. Not for any good reason. Out of rust. Out of pride. Out of that same sentence. I am too old to start something new with strangers. I went because it was harder to refuse a man standing on my porch than it was to go. That was 11 years ago. That coffee group gave me back my weeks, then my months. 4 of those original fellows are gone now, and I sat with 2 of them at the end. New men have come. The chairs stay full. So, when a man tells himself, "I'm too old to make new friends," he is not being realistic, friend. He is deciding to leave a chair empty. That is all that sentence has ever meant, and it is the most expensive sentence a man our age can say to himself. And now the 4th one. The one that is not a visitor at all. Slow down with me here. This is the one that changed how I live my ordinary days, and it is the reason I am making this video instead of keeping all this to myself. The 4th presence in that room is you. Specifically, whoever you have practiced being for 80 years is who is lying in that bed at the end. Now, that could sound like a poem. It is not. I watched it twice in 2 different rooms, and it rearranged how I have spent every year since. The first man had practiced gratitude his whole life. And I want to be precise here because grateful makes him sound soft, and he was not soft. He was a diligent worker, stubborn as a stump, and could hold a grudge against a lawnmower. But somewhere young, he had picked up the habit of saying thank you and meaning it, and he had practiced that habit the way a man practices an instrument. For 60 years. At the end, he was frightened. I want to say that plainly because I am not selling you anything up here. He was frightened, and his body was failing him, and there was nothing dignified about the mechanics of it. And what came out of him was thank you. To the nurses by name. He knew all their names. To his daughter for the water. To me for coming twice, both times like he meant it fresh. The fear did not cancel the practice. The practice held right through the fear because it was the deepest thing in him and there was nothing left to hold it back. The second man, different room a few years later, had spent about 40 years rehearsing grievance. You have heard me describe men like this before. Every conversation a courtroom, every subject a verdict, the world always guilty. And I will say the same thing about him I said before. He was not a bad man. He had had some genuinely hard breaks, and most of his complaints had some truth in them. But in the end, that is what was in the room. His daughter, a woman in her 50s, sat by that bed for a week hoping to hear something from her father. Some blessings. some version of, "You were a good girl." And what she got, in the little windows when he was clear, was the same grievances. The brother-in-law who cheated him in 81. The company. The neighbors. It was not cruelty, friend. That was just the only language he had kept fluent. I drove home from that room and sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time. Because I finally understood what all those rooms had been trying to show me. At the end, you do not rise to some final occasion. There is no last-minute becoming. You default to your deepest groove. Whatever you have practiced most is exactly what shows up when illness and fear have stripped away everything you were using to hold it back. That could sound like a life sentence, and I refuse to leave you there, because I have proof it is not. My neighbor Norman spent 40 years being the grumpiest man on our street. 40 years, championship level. His wife used to apologize for him at the mailbox. Then at 76, his granddaughter asked him whether he was sad or mean, and Norman decided to change. One kind thing said aloud every day, feeling ridiculous, like a man learning to walk again. Norman was in one of those rooms too, at 84. I was there. And what was in that room with Norman was the kindness he had practiced for 8 years. Not the grumpiness he had practiced for 40. 8 years of new practice beat 40 years of the old one. I watched it with my own eyes, and I have never needed another piece of evidence for anything since. So, whoever you practice being this afternoon, with the checkout clerk who is slow, with the order that came out wrong, with the grandkids' noise in your quiet house, that is the man who will be there at the end. Not the man you intend to be. The man you rehearse. He is being built today, in the small ordinary exchanges nobody's grading. He always was. So, there they are, the four. The one you keep by rhythm. The one you let close enough to reach you. The one you have not met yet. And the man you have been practicing all along. Look at that list again and notice what it is. It is a to-do list for this week, wearing a question about the end. Make the Sunday call, pick the person, pick the day. Say yes the next time your daughter offers, even if you do not need help. Show up to the coffee group and be somebody's recent one while he is being yours. And this afternoon, in one small exchange nobody will remember, practice the man you want in that room. That room is not assigned to you, friend. It is assembled, slowly, out of 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays that do not feel like they matter while you are standing in them. You have earned your peace. Spend some of these good years making sure it has company. And if tonight sat heavy on you, do not just carry it, make the call. Not tomorrow. There is a phone in your house and a person on the other end who would be glad to hear your voice for no reason at all. If this spoke to you, subscribe, because next I'm telling you about the day I realized I had become invisible in public, somewhere after 75, and the 3 things I did that brought me back into the room. Every man over 70 knows exactly what I am talking about, and almost none of us ever say it aloud. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.